Good morning again. We are meeting, and I think we are now quorum to start this webinar. And I want to appreciate you for taking your time to join in. Today we are having a webinar entitled COVID-19 in the workplace, and we are privileged to have Professor Okemo take us through this very important topic. As you know, we spend most of our lives in the workplace. And in the current situation with the current pandemic, it's quite important that we know how to conduct ourselves within the workplace in a safe manner. And that is the purpose of this webinar today. As usual, we encourage questions through the chat box, and we'll also have a question and answer session at the end of this presentation. So at this time, I want to request for a volunteer to lead us in a word of prayer, even before we start.
Shall we pray?
Yes.
Let's pray. Our kind and loving Master in heaven, thank you, God, for this day. Thank you, God, for all the members who have managed to join and the ones who are yet to join. Guide us so that we can have a good discussion and we can learn from our speaker today. Bless us now and forevermore. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
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 Thank you, Emma. So without further ado, I want to invite the presenter of today, our distinguished Professor Paul Okemo, to take over. I'll be presenting the slides, Professor, or you managed to be able to share?
No, I did get to be able to share. Just, I'll tell you, just present them. I'll be telling you when to the next one.
Okay. So maybe you can give a brief introduction, then you start off as I share the screen.
Just give me the title slide, then I will give the brief introduction.
Okay. Thank you. Here we are.
Thank you, Daktari. I know that you have audience, and so even as I come to share my slides with the audience, I know that you are an audience that is varying from those who have some training in virology. Some of you have some training in microbiology. Some of you have almost no training in microbiology, but I'll try to be as common or as simple as possible in my explanations so that you do not get lost. And where I find a slide has too many unnecessary details, I'll just pass through that kind of slide. But the most important slides are the ones towards the end, where I'm going to be talking about what we are supposed to do in the workplace in this era of Corona. So, Tariq, can I have the next slide? Hello?
Yes, Prof. We have moved to the next slide.
It's not showing.
It's not showing.
It's still.
Okay, let me start afresh.
Okay. Just click to that number 2 slide. What is coronavirus?
Yeah.
Now, this one, for those of you who...
Yes.
Yeah, that one. For those of you who have no training in virology, I know you have had a lot of talk about this coronavirus issue, but I just wanted to mention that a lot of times you have heard them tell you that this is a virus or these are viruses of zoonotic nature. Now, zoonotic there, what they are trying to tell us is that it is a virus or a group of viruses that are transmitted between animals and people. And one thing I want to make clear at this point is that most viruses are very specific. If there is a virus for specific animals, it is only for that species. Viruses that will infect humans don't necessarily go to other animals or even to plants. And even for the lower levels of life, a virus that will infect a certain bacteria will not infect the others. So when they say zoonotic, this means that these are those viruses that have the power, or they are able to move from humans to other animals, and then from other animals also to humans. This is a very rare phenomenon. Now, when it comes to humans, I also want to mention at this point that it causes respiratory infections. Most of them are supposed to be mild, but some of them can be fairly lethal. Let's go to the third slide. Now, this third slide, really, the reason I put it there is not necessarily for a training in a virology class or a microbiology class, but I just put it there so that we can see how the virus looks like. I know you have seen this picture in many of the pictures we have had in newspapers and in magazines and so on. And so those of you who have some training in microbiology or in virology, I just wanted to put up this to show you that it has got those spikes which are protein in nature, and it has even smaller spikes and an RNA genome, which I have shown down there. Let's go to the next one. Next one. Now, this is how you will see it in under the microscope. Those of you who have observed this, can you see my arrow if I point out some of these things with my mouse? Can that be seen? This is the mouse.
No, Prof, we cannot see.
Okay.
Unless you'd want me to show. I don't know if people can see my movement.
Yes, that one we can
screen.
see. That one we can see. Yeah, so those are the spikes that Dr. is showing up there. And this is what you see under the microscope. I just wanted to bring it up because it might be able to explain some things that I want to explain at the very end. Dr. Let's go to slide number 5. Now, in slide number 5, what I want us to see is that the virus infects that respiratory tract. Dr. You can put that, yes, at the respiratory tract on your left where it says infected area. Yes, so that is where the virus gets in. And then this virus starts replicating. By replicating, we mean it starts dividing, and it completely affects the respiratory tract, mainly the lungs and the air passages. It really affects them. And I'll just show you in a little while what happens when it affects those areas. Let's go to the next one. 6. Now, in slide number 6, once the virus has come in there, what these viruses do, they are not self-existing. They must exist in something, in an animal, in a cell, or so. And what they do to the cell or the animal is that they tell the cells or the animal that now we are taking over. And as we take over, we are going to tell you what we want you to do for us. And they instruct the human cells or the animal cells to make the kind of protein that will only help the virus build itself. And in the past, I have explained this is how the HIV virus makes people thin, because it gets into those cells it divides or multiplies in the cells. And once it has reached a certain number, they burst the cell, they split the cell, and then the younger or the progeny of the virus will move into other cells, thereby just bursting the host cells as they move around. And that's why in HIV and AIDS, people used to be seen getting thinner because their cells are being used up by the virus. This virus is doing the same thing. It goes into the lungs, the respiratory tract, and then it just instructs those cells that from now you are going to make viral cells, and each viral cell is going to infect another host cell. Let's move to the next one, number 7. Now, the symptoms, once it does that, once it is in the body, and it is now giving those instructions to the body that you do this, you do that. I didn't want to get, involved in the synthesis of proteins and all those areas because it is not necessary for this time. So because the body is stressed, the symptoms start coming out, that one of fever, the body starts getting hot. You start coughing because the system is irritated. There is shortness of breath. The chest radiograph showing bilateral lung infiltrations. Bilateral lung infiltrations, what it is doing is that it is actually destroying lung cells. It is destroying lung cells. And when this goes on for some time, it shows pneumonia-like symptoms. And then you end up with kidney failure, and most of the time, there is death. Let's go to the next one. In the original recognition of COVID-19, we started to see, in fact, when it started, we started to see people having headache, having sore throat, and having coughs and shortness of breath. Let me point out that viruses are interesting. Interesting in the sense that there are many others that we don't know about. And there are many others that are going to also come up. And so with each one of them, and even the ones that already exist now, it is at that point that they start affecting us, that we start taking down their data, the information. And as we take down the information, we start to understand the virus more and more. So what we started to see with this China coronavirus, we started to see fever, chest pain, chills, rapid heartbeat, breathing difficulties, pneumonia-like symptoms, kidney failure in many of the hosts. And this is how we started characterizing the virus and trying to understand it more and more, because it is only after we understand the virus that we can be able to start looking for ways of stopping these effects in humans. Even if they were in our animals, it is only after taking down this history that we start to follow up, understand the virus, understand what it is doing to us, and see what we can do about it. What can we do so that we don't get this fever, we don't get the chest pains, we don't get the chills. And as I was telling some conference yesterday or a workshop on biosecurity and biosafety, I was telling them that we have not seen it all, and we should be prepared for the worst. I gave some references of a book called Future Plague. And in this book, Future Plague, the author is theorizing on what humans should expect in future, what is likely to happen in future. And I can promise that in the next 50 or so years, many strange things are going to happen. We are going to have many more agents like this coronavirus infecting humans. And so we have to be prepared and see what we can do best to protect ourselves. Get to the next one, Daktari, on timeline of onset. Now, when this thing started, there is that day one. I just wanted to bring this one up. There was that day one. We would watch 7 days after that day one, we would start to see if the thing is going to be serious or not. Let me also point out that the mortality rate for this virus was expected to be 2%, which means 98% of the people would not come up with fatal reactions or fatal symptoms. But by and by, we started to see more and more, and I believe that the mortality rate went beyond 2%, I think. And so the data that was being taken, and we watched what was happening to the victims, we started to see at day 7, where there is hospital admission, we started to have this acute respiratory disease syndrome. And when that point passes, we would start to see the shortness of breath. And sometimes because of this shortness of breath, the patient quickly regressed into intensive care. And this is where we would have people collapse and die. So now, having given you that brief introduction or that brief expose of what a virus is and what this coronavirus is and how it has affected us, let me go into how it will affect us in the workplace. Slide 10. Now, the workers at risk, these are those with the transplants. The workers with the transplants, the big reason why these people are at risk is because they have a depressed immune systems. Once you have a transplant, there is possibility of that depressed immune system. Then we have individuals with comorbidities. These comorbidities will include things like diabetes, things like high blood pressure. These fellows get very affected because this diabetes or high blood pressure helps in stressing the body and encouraging the virus to be more virulent, making the virus now have power over the body. People with cancer is already stressing the body. And so when the virus comes in, the virus finds that the immune system is already stressed. And so the virus is not stopped as easily as it would have been stopped if the individual was healthy. People who are obese, these ones are also fairly vulnerable. They are at risk. And then those with prolonged use of certain drugs, like the one I have put on the screen, the corticosteroids, and the ones who are immune depressed, like those ones who have HIV and AIDS. These are people who should be taken care of very carefully because they are very vulnerable. They are workers at risk. Let's go to the next one, Daktari. So the common questions that get asked are, does the coronavirus, does it affect older people or even younger people? Yes, it will affect people of all ages. Older people with pre-existing medical conditions like asthma, diabetes, heart disease, those ones appear to be more vulnerable. And when they get the virus, they become severely ill with the virus. WHO advises people of all ages to take steps to protect themselves from the virus. Now, some people have asked certain questions. Why is it that those young people are not so much at risk? The young people are not so much at risk because their immune systems are still very okay. Their immune systems are still very active. And when the virus comes in and finds a very active immune system, the immune system very quickly controls the virus. And this is why most young people do not show the symptoms of corona infection. They have competent our immune systems. As you grow older, our immune systems get weaker. And because the immune systems are weaker, we are more at risk than the younger people. Let's go to the next one. So what are the factors that influence spread in our workplace? Some of these factors are occupational. And by occupational, what I mean is that people who work under inadequate ventilation, these people can get infected easily because they are in close proximity with each other. If I had the virus and I'm working in the same environment with a person who doesn't have the virus, I will very easily transmit the virus to this person. Now, there was a time when the coronavirus started, when they were discouraging people from boarding planes because it was thought that the air in the plane was shared. And so people would come up with with a lot of corona infections. But people in the plane, they started filtering most of this air, and it was removing most of these viral particles as they circulate the air back. Now, let me also point out something I have pointed out before when I talk about biosafety. This is that in future, I have this fear that we may get certain evil individuals who will want to insert some genes in viral particles or even bacterial particles, where the gene that is inserted will be a very little gene that kills the individual who receives this virus or this particle. And this little gene will have a carrier. This carrier will be one that easily transmits from one person to the other. So the little gene will be carried by this transmissibility gene. The transmissibility gene, I would give you an example, those of you who are in the medical field, of the influenza. Influenza, you can transmit it in a matatu, you can transmit influenza in a bus or in a crowded place. But if you have another gene in this same particle or in this organism, which is like the Ebola gene, the Ebola gene is very little. And if you now combine this Ebola gene with the influenza one, which is very transmissible, you can be able to infect the whole matatu in just 10 minutes or 15 minutes that you share the matatu with the people. So this is something that we should be very, very afraid of. If it ever happens, it will completely disseminate the human population. And I have this fear in me that we could have some evil people who may be thinking of that kind of thing. So another danger is shared work accommodation, where you share where you live or the offices where you are. If one of you or some of you are infected with the coronavirus, you spread it in the air. This is an air-bound virus, and it will move through the air and it will be breathed in by your neighbor, and so you get infected. People in travel and eating areas or food production workers, these are people who can infect other people. And these are the factors that influence spread in the workplace. Drivers and transportation workers, these are also some other people who are in danger. Education workers, we meet many students, some of them are infected, and because they are infected, this virus can go as far as six, if we are talking of feet, 6 feet. If you are talking of meters, about 2 meters, 3 meters, it will be able to catch the next victim. Social workers and counselors, those are people who get in contact with other people very frequently, and they can easily get infected. Now, which are the other factors? Let's see slide 13. Now, in slide 13, I am looking at the socio-demographic factors. Socio-demographic factors in the sense that where are you in society? Low-income bracket people. These are people who are likely to be staying in one room, sharing one room. And when you share the one room, you share the air in that one room. And so if any of you is infected, that person is going to share with the other people in the room. So the low-income bracket people are likely to be more infected than others. The female gender, I was reading a paper by Lee and Kim of 2020, and it looks like the ladies are more prone to this virus than the men. The ladies should be more resistant to succumb to the infection than men, but why they get more readily infected, maybe it could be because of the roles they play in society. They get in contact with more people in society than the men. Then immigrant status. I was reading another paper by St. Denis of 2021. Now the immigrants tend to get the virus very readily, and this can be explained because these immigrant people, these are people who are already worried. You are an immigrant, you are worried. You are moving from Ukraine to Poland, for example. You have moved long distances, you are worried, therefore your immune system is depressed. So I was not really surprised at this idea of immune status. Now, occupations that give you close proximity to other people, of course, that one is self-explanatory. But I think the writer of this paper on occupations that give you close customer proximity, this is somebody who was thinking about the low income type of occupations where you do things in groups, you do things, or you are casual workers. And so you come in contact more and more with each other. Those people who work in offices or who are socially high in the places they work, they may work in an office and they could be in that office alone. And so the issue of getting in contact with other people is slightly lower. Now, the workers with post-secondary education, they have low exposure risks. But this one I could understand from this paper of Dennis of 2022, that is self-explanatory in the sense that those workers who are post-secondary school education, they don't seem to do jobs that will expose them more to this infection. Daktari, get to the next one. I hope I'm not being too slow so that I take too much of your time. I'll try to hurry up a little to give you a little more time to ask questions. So how can I help protect myself from the coronavirus? Give me slide 15. How can I protect myself? Now, I can protect myself by restricting worksite entrance to key workers. The worksite should not be a place where anybody is coming to. If we protect that worksite, then we are likely to have fewer and fewer infections. So our intervention would be to restrict the getting together of many people. Then there is the physical distancing guidelines. If we can have those physical distancing guidelines, at least more than 6 feet or 2 meters. I know that in many supermarkets or in many social places, they have put 1.5 meters. Yes, maybe that is work that has been done elsewhere. You know, science is a very interesting subject. It's a subject where you can agree to disagree with each other. Science is a subject that is looking for truth. My truth may not be the same truth as somebody else's truth, but as scientists, we try to convince each other that my truth is better than your truth. So there are those who have settled for physical distancing of 1.5 meters. There are those who have settled for 2 meters. So for physical distancing, I can give, for example, between 1.5 and 2 meters. Then we must have routine screening. Now routines, you know that screening of corona is very irritating because it is very invasive. We have to get into the nose and do the swabbing of the nose. And those who have had that screening, you know that you don't want to do it twice or 3 times. It is something that if you do once, you will feel like telling the doctor, please, this time don't swab my nose. So routine screening is good, but it is also a bit irritating because it is too invasive. I'm always wondering why we can't get a better way of screening than that invasive way of going into the nose. Then we must have contact tracing. Of course, that has helped a lot in reducing infections. Then there is the environmental monitoring that also has helped in reducing infections. We monitor the environment. We make sure that we disinfect the environment. We make sure that the environment is clean and there is fresh air. Then there is PPE. PPE is mainly for people who work in hospitals or people who work in risky areas like laboratories. You put on personal protective equipment. This is very important for you. Then the ill workers must be they must self-isolate. The moment you know you are ill, you are suffering from corona, let's have you self-isolate. We need to have quarantine policies in what we do or in our workplaces. We need to have those quarantine policies. Let's see the next slide, slide 17. Daktari, slide 17. Hello?
Bro, we have 16.
You have, we have 16.
Yes, we were 15.
Yeah, thank you. Now in slide 16, we have workplace interventions. And I must stress this idea of vaccination. I feel bad, very bad, that there are some people who have chosen not to be vaccinated because of certain beliefs. There are people who believe that some funny things have been done to the vaccines, and so if they get vaccinated, certain things are supposed to happen. They are supposed to die in the next 3 or 5 years. And this part of why I went and took the vaccine immediately, to show that if you see me dying, then don't come for the vaccine. But I have not died since I took the vaccine. And I can assure you there is nothing wrong with that vaccine. I must stress the fact that we should still go for that vaccination. We should go for the second shot, and we should go for the booster shot. This is very protective. It is not going to make you sterile. There's no way it is going to make you sterile. These are vaccines that have been tested and we know that they are okay. One other thing that makes me sad is to know and to be told that we have almost 1 million vaccines that are going to be destroyed when many people in this country are not vaccinated. Surely, colleagues, comrades, there's nothing as good as getting you are protected. We need to have routine cleaning and disinfection. This routine cleaning, even if it is not going to be for corona, let us have it as a common practice. It is going to protect us from even other infections. Infections you get because you have touched surfaces, infections you get because your hands have been in contact with something that is infective. Let us make that a habit. You have noticed that right now, because we have been using masks, the idea of having common colds are going down. I don't know if anybody is doing that research. And when we say we have got no research areas, it makes me sad to think that the research areas are so many and nobody's working on them. Nobody's even trying to find out what happened to the common cold. Nobody's even find out what happened to STIs from the time we started protecting ourselves from HIV and AIDS and putting on condoms. These STIs have gone down greatly. So these issues of routine cleaning, disinfection, they are good practices. Let us keep them up. And then let workers who know or who have been in contact with people who are infected, let them also realize that you can just clean yourself with the disinfectants and you should be okay. Now, we need to let our workers also know, for example, in our setting, who can they contact with questions concerning COVID-19? Who should they contact? Should they contact our health unit so that the health unit can give them answers to those questions? Yes, they can contact our health unit. We are also around. This is supposed to be a university. We are supposed to be in all these disciplines. In fact, if a university in any country does not have all this information, then that university should close. It is not helping anybody. So this kind of questions, we need to have some contact people. If you can contact people from our health unit, they will give you this information. We have doctors around whom we can contact, who can give you this information. You have ourselves, who are the paramedics, who can also give you answers to these questions. Some of us are even actively involved in doing research in these areas, and we have come up with certain facts that we can share with you as our colleagues and you as the community. So feel free to ask these questions to us. We'll try to give you answers. Then you need to maintain workplace safety. Workplace safety in the sense that let us not socialize too much. Yes, it is good to socialize, but let's not do it too much. And if we must do it, then let's have masks as we interact. We limit workplace social interaction. Hii maneno ya kuenda in workplaces and mnataka kuongea, tunataka kupiga story. These stories have these droplet infections that come from our noses and mouths that will infect the next person. And when they infect the next person, they'll get the corona. We need to maintain face masks. Let the workers and even the customers who contact us, let them use these face masks. We shall be safe not only from corona, from also respiratory diseases. I'm sure that by putting on face masks, we can even be able to reduce the probability and the morbidity of tuberculosis. Let's participate in training on how rooms can be ventilated. We check the blocked ventilations. Let's open most of them so that the place is adequately ventilated. Let's go to 17. In 17, I was just trying to show disinfection, that the disinfection is effective. Disinfection is not the same as fumigating. Fumigating, you are doing fumigation to rodents, to lower animals that take in oxygen and use oxygen for breathing. The virus doesn't breathe, so it is not going to be fumigated. I have had many cases where people say, fumigate places where you live and places where you work. Yes, fumigation is okay. It will get rid of other undesired agents. But I can assure you, fumigation is not doing anything to viruses. Viruses must be disinfected. Let's go to 18. These are practices that we should always remember. One, protecting ourselves against the virus. Avoid close contact with anyone showing symptoms of respiratory illness. That we have to do. Then two, we need to wear gloves. wash or change them daily. In hospitals, you've seen this being done by our clinicians, our nurses. Every time they touch a patient, every time they interact with the patient, they take new gloves for the next patient. So even as if we practice this kind of things or activities, we'll be okay. Let's continue to wash our hands as we had started. Let's wash our towels if they have been touched. Your hand towels, if they have touched your hands. No, let us see how we disinfect them. Then we avoid touching doorknobs and banisters. Cover our mouths and noses when we cough or sneeze. Wear surgical masks. They are not very effective, some of them, especially some of them I've seen being sold for 10 shillings. I don't know if they can be very useful. Then we cook our foods very thoroughly. Let's go to 20. Okay, this one, I just put it there so that I'm stressing the idea of wearing of face masks in heavily crowded places, frequent washing of hands with soap, then avoiding hand contact with our eyes, avoid shaking hands. The shaking of hands had almost completely died off. People have been bumping instead of shaking hands. I will encourage that this continues. The shaking of hands should even be stopped completely. Avoid contact with live animals. Some of these viruses are moving from animals to humans. Then we avoid undercooked meat, eggs, and raw fruits and things like that. Let's go to the next. The common rules to stay healthy while traveling: avoid travel if you have a fever or cough. If you have a fever or cough or difficulty breathing, you seek medical care early and you share previous travel history with your healthcare provider so that they know how to help you. They know where you have been from. They know how they can prescribe. Then I have about 3 more slides left. I'll go to this slide. Now, this slide, I put it in there particularly to tell everybody that no antibiotic will work against viruses. Antibiotics do not work against viruses, and do not take antibiotics for viral infections, for corona infections. However, if you are co-infected by other agents like bacteria, then the doctors know and they will give you appropriate antibiotics to stop the infection of the co-infector, which might be bacteria or fungus or anything else, but not the virus. So I just put in this slide to let you know that viruses will not respond to antibiotics. Let's go to the next one. To date, there is scientific medicine recommended to prevent or to treat viruses. The only remedy is vaccination. The only way we can stop corona is by getting vaccinated. And corona will continue to stay with us if we do not take these precautions. I think the next slide, which is 23, is just stressing on these issues on slide 21 and slide 22. So let's go to slide 23. Yes, thank you. Now, in slide 23, it is just stressing on slide 21 and slide 22, where I'm saying, and I want us to underline this, viruses are not free living. And because they are not free living, most of them will live within other structures, within other cells. And because they live within other cells, we cannot use conventional methods to attack them. Remember, other cells we are using antibiotics have all kinds of activities, and we are attacking these microbes because we know certain structures that will respond to our action. But with viruses, they don't have those structures because they are not free living. So we can use cell structures, control them, host cell structures, our own, because we now become the host. We can only use our own cell structures to control them. Such structures include the body defense system. It's only our body defense system that will be able to control these viruses, will be able to control the coronaviruses. Therefore, this is why we must be vaccinated. We must be vaccinated. Daktari, give me the last slide. And in this last slide, I'm saying, let us join hands and reason together to fight the bugs ravaging our communities. If we don't do that, the bugs are going to win. Thank you. Daktari, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Professor, for that very detailed presentation. I think this has been a very exhaustive and yet practical presentation. I think workplace culture, a strong workplace culture that is resilient and able to cope with emerging threats. I thank you for raising the issue of the emerging threats that can come, and we need a culture or a workplace that is resilient and able to cope with these emerging threats. Even as we somehow feel that Corona is going away, yet there are still other threats that are out there, and we need to be ready for them. So thank you very much, Professor, for that. I want us to go to the question and answers. And I think before that, let me stop sharing, and then we can have a discussion now. So going to the chat box, I would want to just, maybe even as you get a glass of water, is to just go to the charts. And I can see Dr. Kadongo has written, oh no, okay, this is a direct message. Let's see. There's a request for sharing your slides. And of course, somebody appreciating this is a great presentation. And now that we are TOTs, we can use them to train others who missed this presentation. So I thank you very much, Jay Masasabi, for that. He's actually feels empowered by this presentation and can actually train others. And Emma asked, is taking temperature a necessary measure in COVID-19 prevention at the workplace? So over to you, Professor GBC.
Now, let me start with sharing of slides. Yes, we can share the slides. The Daktari already has, the director has the slides. Director, you can share the slides with everybody else. And then I also want to mention that I am willing to go through more talks with the university population about this virus or any other viruses that you may have in mind. I am ready to share that information or the talk with the university community. Anytime you let me know when you are ready and what you want me to talk about. So that one I'll be ready to do. What was the other one, Daktari?
The other one was about the temperature taking as a measure for workplace safety. Is it still relevant?
Now, the temperature taking, let me put it this way, that now we have seen even cases where people don't show any high temperatures. We are not relating the high temperature with coronavirus anymore. And that's why the temperature taking has been withdrawn. You can have the virus and not show high temperatures. So that has now been withdrawn, I think officially by the ministry. And even us, we have withdrawn it. I think I wrote that circular that we withdraw it.
Yes, indeed, the DVC wrote, and there is the place for now the mask is in the indoor. In indoor settings, mask wearing is still encouraged, but in public and open places, people can remove the masks.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think let's go on. So the temperature has been shared, and many people are appreciating this presentation. There is Jay Masasabi, there is Dr. Thaddeus, Emma says good presentation. Wangai Mercy appreciates that this presentation is actually timely. Now that it's not mandatory to wear masks. So we also need to appreciate the presentation. I'm seeing Emma asking, what is your take on mask wearing at the workplace? I think we have dealt with that, and there is the memo in which mask wearing is encouraged indoors or when attending meetings, but in public places, you may not, it's your choice. You may wear the mask or you may not wear the mask. And then it is somebody said it's important to know the benefits apart from spread of COVID-19. So are there maybe other benefits apart from controlling of spread 19? And I think, Prof, I don't know if you want to say something about that.
What was this one? Is there?
These workplace measures. Somebody is just asking, is there a role beyond COVID-19?
I even pointed out that it is COVID-19 that these practices are going to protect you from. There are other respiratory diseases that these workplace practices are going to protect you from. And I pointed out that the common cold, if you have been observant enough, you notice that it is not as common now as it has been without those masks. And that is because the putting on of masks has not only protected us from the coronavirus, but it has also protected us from common cold. Another one I mentioned was tuberculosis. I said that if we continued with this masking, even the infection of tuberculosis is going to go down because there is no transmissibility. The mask is going to protect us. So it has a lot of benefits. Now, I have seen some other questions on the chat that
yes.
Variants of the virus, the transmissibility of those variants. The viruses mutate. They mutate very fast and they mutate very frequently. We are going to have a lot of variants. And let me point out something that I have pointed out before in other talks about viruses, that when the viruses mutate, they tend to lose their virulence. They tend to become attenuated, what we call attenuated, weaker. And sometimes we use those attenuated viruses, the weaker viruses, as vaccines. And people are vaccinated with those weaker viruses because they have lost their lethality, their lethal capabilities. So we are going to have a lot of these mutations that are going to lead to viruses which may still be coronaviruses, but their lethality or their impact on us as a disease is going to be much lower. But let me also put another rider. The other rider is that we can get a variant that can even be more lethal than the one we have had before. So let's completely be careful. let's be careful as we do this. There could be a variance, but the variance can either be weaker or stronger. Most of the time, they will be weaker.
Thank you, Prof, for that one. I can see today's topic was quite thought-provoking, and there are many questions. So Njeri asked, when you have already been vaccinated, how much risk of contracting the virus do you have?
Well, when you have been vaccinated, of course, if you get in contact with somebody who has the virus, of course you will get the virus. But remember, the reason why you are vaccinated is so that you can develop antibodies. The antibodies will be in you. So when the virus comes in you, the virus will already find a ready fighting barrier for the virus. And so the virus will not be able to proliferate or replicate as easily as it would have done if you are not vaccinated. So the vaccine will protect you from the virus because you will be having antibodies.
Yes, going on with the questions, TB is on the rise. Could this be attributed to the removal of masks? And maybe also,
in the past,
yes, there is a go on.
In the past, in fact, TB had been on the rise even before Corona. It had been on the rise. In fact, we had even multiple drug-resistant tuberculosis. We had had it even before, and it was on the rise. But when we started putting on masks, nobody has done any research to see whether the infection has been cut down on tuberculosis or not. But we expect that since tuberculosis is transmitted that same way, when we put on masks, it should be able to go down. But what we are saying is that as scientists, we are not doing enough. We should be doing research in that area to find out if that has really cut the transmissibility of tuberculosis as much as we expect. We should have done that research, which we have not done.
Thank you, Prof. And now Shem says, has a kind of a contrary opinion, where he proposes that could wearing of masks have weakened our immune system, more so at the respiratory level, and now we are more exposed to viruses and TB.
Because of the wearing of masks?
Yes, in the sense our immune system is not being challenged as much.
Shem, I think we will need some data on that one, because I do not think that wearing of masks made our immune system any weaker. I think maybe we didn't have those challenges, that is true, but I don't think our body system had completely forgotten the role it has in our protection. Shem, I think that is, we can discuss that. Shem Mutwiri?
Yes, Shem Mutwiri.
Yes, I think we can discuss that. He's in my department.
Yeah, but I think maybe for information of the listeners is that we actually were very worried in November 2019 because of the rise of MDR, or what we call the multiple drug resistant TB in the Kenyatta community, in the Kenyatta University community. And actually we were thinking of campaigns to try and case find. So actually the coming of COVID-19 and the wearing of masks and physical distancing and ventilation actually helped a lot, because MDR cases were on the rise, and it was quite worrying. So I think we are doing well in terms of time, and I can see, of course, Barack appreciating this presentation and encouraging us to continue with the protocol. And then Priscilla says, is there a limit to the number of vaccines one can receive, or 3 stipulated ones are just enough? When do we stop getting the jabs?
The immune system, of course, starts going down, and I think we have had some research done to show that after some time, the antibodies start going down. But our cells are still primed that if we get the agent again in the body, the cells will quickly proliferate. And I think this is why internationally we are encouraged to continue having boosters. We continue having boosters, and I think there was a time they were saying, was it after 6 months, Daktari?
Yes, the current standard is after 6 months, you come for the booster. So I think that is the practice. However, I maybe just to add, I was reading a paper, I think some research done in Israel, and actually they were saying 3 doses seem to be quite protective, and we should all aim to get the 3 doses. That means the primary series, the one or two injections in the primary series, then 6 months you get the booster. So that seems to be quite ideal. And the 4th dose does not seem to maybe add too much after you've gotten your 3 doses. So I want to encourage everybody who is listening to us that make sure you get to the 3rd dose. And then after that, we can probably wait for further instructions. Yeah, so we'll be going on with the questions. Somebody is raising something which is more of welfare and says, I believe we lost some staff to COVID-19. Could we have a memorial day for our beloved one as a university? So that's more of a welfare and more of administrative. I don't know. Prof, would you want to take that one?
Can I abstain from answering that? Today's talk was mainly on COVID-19 in the workplace.
In the workplace. However,
and
I
so,
think
you know, my mind now is primed on COVID-19 in workplace. I've even forgotten about my other things in the office. So let me just concentrate on COVID-19.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. I think to answer Anthony, the sense that we should honor their memory by creating that workplace hygiene culture, which I think is very useful for us. So the workplace hygiene and sanitation is what should be the memory, a living memory for the ones we lost. And of course, getting vaccinated. I think that will honor the memory. Then I can see Godfrey Mai all the way from Mombasa campus. And he says that I notice some countries prefer mRNA vaccines. Is there a reason for this? Because I had AstraZeneca, which doesn't belong to this group. Prof,
I thought you were going to continue with the talk so that you give a bit of feedback before I say what I think.
No, I think this one, he wants an expert opinion.
On whether RNA vaccines are better.
Yes, he actually, it's good. He admits he got the AstraZeneca. So he wants to he's curious on why some countries would prefer the mRNA.
I think some of them prefer because of availability, and also some of them prefer because of affordability in some of the vaccines, although some of them were free. Either way, I think what we are trying to get is the viral protein, whether it's messenger RNA that we are putting in. What it is going to do is going to synthesize viral protein, and it's that viral protein that the body is going to react against. So whether you present an already synthesized protein or you use messenger RNA to go and manufacture the protein, it is the same thing.
Yes.
Answer you.
Yes. In fact, I just want to add that right now, with the availability, wide availability of the different types of vaccines in the country, we find that most of us started with AstraZeneca in the primary series, but now we are in the booster, we are doing Pfizer. So that also allows a varied immune, the vaccines to challenge your immune system based on the different vaccines. So I think on the general information is that ideally, if possible, it would be good that you mix and match. So if you got Astra, get Pfizer for the booster. So, however, and the other thing I wanted to stress is that in terms of efficacy, we who got AstraZeneca and the AstraZeneca vaccine in the Kenyan context has proven itself to be quite efficacious, and especially where we want it to be most effective in the severe disease and preventing severe disease and death. I think AstraZeneca has proven itself in our context. So I can see we are at the end of the questions, Professor. So
Yeah,
I think
that will be fine, so that I can now start priming myself to look at other. Is that okay?
Yes, yes, and I want to appreciate you for actually taking us through this topic. I think you've done justice to it, and you can see by the attendance and the interaction, these people are really interested in this. And Professor Okemo is available for this kind of discussion, and he's always ready to give his opinion and inputs into this kind of discussion. So I really want to thank you, Professor Okemo, for facilitating this session. I want to thank all the participants for making time to join us for this COVID-19 series. I know some have actually joined us from the very first one, and all through they have been consistent, which is very good. So next week we'll be having another COVID-19 webinar, and in this time we'll be discussing the revised MOH protocols. So I look forward to seeing you on that session. We start on Friday at 9 to 10 or 10:30. So I look forward to seeing you. With that, I want to wish you a good day and God's blessings. Thank you very much for turning in, and get vaccinated. I think the last word is get vaccinated. Get boosted if you have already been vaccinated. Thank you very much. And wish you a very nice Friday. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. And Prof, there are very nice comments on the, Prof, there are very nice comments on the chat box. Kindly review them. Thank you. Thank you for the appreciation.
Bye.
Thank you.